So, welcome everybody. This is a brief history of superstitions. Um, this came about because we have been trying to do some informative programs. We figured this was a good time to, we can't have cooking programs, we can't have programs where everybody gets together, but we can share information, and not all information has to be unfun. So superstitions is something that I'm into. I consider myself a very superstitious person. Um, so I wanted to take a look at, where these come from. Where do our superstitions come from? What's the history behind them? Uh, so, so a superstition is, it's a belief that we share, and usually it's something that we think brings us good luck or bad luck. There's these are some definitions I found that I thought were really great. My personal favorite is the last one, where it says a superstition is a way to get through a tough situation. It's a set of rules to follow in a game without rules. And I thought that was described it very well. We usually uh, latch on to our superstitions when we're anxious about something. um, so that you'll meet people and they'll say, "Oh, I'm not superstitious. I'm not superstitious," but chances are they do one of these things. They'll cross their fingers, or they'll pick up a penny for good lucks. And if you do any of those things, then guess what? You're superstitious. You're following a superstition. You might not think you believe in it or anything, but if you're doing it, then you're practicing this superstition. So is
Right?
it? Yeah.
Could you make could you do make the slideshow full screen so it's big enough to read?
I If I do that, then I won't be able to manage any of the Zoom functions. That's I can try. Hold on, let me see if I can do that and see what happens. Um, and you tell me if you're seeing it full screen or not.
I am not.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay, you are. Okay. All right, and I still have my chat. Okay, so I can do that. There we go.
Okay.
Um, so is anybody here consider them superstitious? You could just raise your hand, or pop in, or not. But like I
I
said,
certainly am.
you consider yourself superstitious. Do you do all of these things? Some of them, none of them?
I knock on wood.
Yeah. So we're gonna go over. That is definitely one of the ones we're gonna go into. So how many people are superstitious? So, like, a percentage? It's something that's very hard for them to calculate, because, like I said previously, some people would not consider themselves to be superstitious, though they practice some of the superstitions. And another thing is that a lot of time it's something that's private. So it's hard to know that somebody is superstitious, or watching them practice it. But the question then is why? Why are we superstitious? Why do these superstitions exist? And why do we still deal with them today? As you'll see as we go through, a lot of these date back thousands of years. And so, why do we still practice them? And one of the theories is that, people, there's a belief that when we hit the Renaissance, or the Age of Enlightenment, that it was like this boom, everything, sort of became modern. And it's like, well, some old habits and old beliefs don't disappear, overnight. They can take a long time, and sometimes they get strengthened. And as you'll see, some of these date, some of the ones that we know about, that we all know about, date after the Renaissance. So where does it come from? So, if you think back to the Middle Ages and before that, it's like life was hard. There's some statistics here that in 1500, life expectancy was 33 to 40 years old, and 30% of children died before the age of 5. So people were looking for luck anywhere they could get it. A lot of them turned to religion. You prayed. That was, and there's a lot of sociological articles that, link religion to superstition, and and a lot of the things, went hand in hand. Um, but I think the prevailing theory was if you lived at this time, you were willing to take good luck wherever it came, whether it came from prayer, but you'd still pick up a lucky penny because you just life was hard, and just the difficulty of reality was, you know, lent itself to people practicing superstitious beliefs. So psychologists have recently started studying superstition only in the last 2 centuries or so. And they were having trouble sort of figuring it out, you know, where they things came from, or why people believed them and why they practiced them. But like I had mentioned before, a lot of it, it was hard to distinguish what was superstition from what was religion. And as you'll also see, some of these superstitions are actually based in science. A sort of what we would call a primitive understanding of some scientific truths lent themselves to superstitions, because they didn't have the knowledge to necessarily prove what they were saying or what they believed, but there was enough evidence that they knew there was a connection between A and B, um, and it led itself to a creation of superstitions. So why is this important? Why do we care? Is it just something fun? But I mean, the truth is, even if you're not superstitious, even if you don't practice anything, superstitions affect your life. And this is a perfect example. Nancy Reagan was extremely superstitious, and she consulted a an astrologer frequently. And there was a White House staffer who wrote a biography or a tell-all about inside the White House, and he goes on to explain that before trips were planned, before dinner parties were planned, before Reagan made any sort of announcements about big policy things, she consulted this astrologist to make sure that everything was aligned so it would be a favorable, time to do this. The White House later said that it never affected policy decisions, that it wasn't integral in it, but there's no denying there's tons of records that these phone calls happened, that they took place, and that things were, scheduled and coordinated around horoscopes, which are a form of superstition. So even if you don't think that superstition is part of your life, chances are it is part of your life because so many people practice these things. So what we're going to do is we go through is I've broken down the superstitions into kind of vague categories. So the first one we're going to talk about is number superstitions, and we're all familiar with um, some of them. Then like what you see on the screen, number 13. We all know about Friday the 13th, or unlucky 13, or lucky 7. So there are a lot of superstitions that are surrounded by numbers, and a lot of it is where numerology, which I'm sure if you don't know, numerology is like astrology. It's this sort of every number, dates, times, things like that are worked into your, tell the story of your life or can predict your life in the way that astrology can. We're going to start with 13 because that's the big one. Um, 13, like you'll see as we go through, like many superstitions, 13 can be a lucky or unlucky number depending on, where your belief system is. The Egyptians liked 13. 13 was a lucky number. It was the last stage before going to heaven in their philosophy. So you climbed during a lifetime, and each step representing another on the road to knowledge. And the 13th step was the step to eternal life. So that sounds great. That's a good number. But then somewhere along the line, it becomes kind of unlucky. And this is one theory that people have of how it became unlucky, is that they say that primitive man was able to count to 10 using his fingers, and then he would add his feet, and that's 12. And then, after 12 becomes unknown. And so 13 is the fear of the unknown. And they, this one seems a little odd to me because I know they say that, they thought of feet as a unit, but I mean, they saw that they had toes, so they could have counted to 20. Um, so that seems a little, I don't know, far-fetched to me, but, that's where you'll find. Um, but this is probably more accurate, is the fact that there were 13 guests at the dinner during the Last Supper. And there's also a Norse myth that tells the story of an unlucky dinner that had 13 guests. So then it becomes religion. It's a religious doctrine in a way that, 13 became an unlucky number associated with religious stories, and people take away from that 13 is an unlucky number.
Interestingly enough, um, groups of 12 and less act as a small group. Once you hit 13, you have to switch to looking at large group dynamics.
Is that true? So that's where that's where statistically that's where they make that separation.
That's what where social psychologists make the distinction.
And you wonder if it comes from this unlucky 13 aspect, or where did they come up with that 13? Was it an arbitrary number, or was it's more than a dozen, it's the unknown, it's the
I
unlucky
think
13?
I think it was experimental, and so maybe the story, the superstitions about 13 came from something like that, came from that number.
That's very possible. So I mean, as most of you probably know, in America, 13's officially considered a lucky number. 13 is all over the dollar bill. There's 13 steps to the pyramid. There's 13 leaves and and berries on the olive branch that the eagle's holding 13 arrows, and there was 13 colonies. So, the official doctrine in America is that 13 is a lucky number, but the majority of people in this country consider it an unlucky number, which is why, most tall buildings don't have a 13th floor. Anybody that's lived in a big city will know that the elevators, it's 12 to 14. There's no 13th floor. Um, and when there's a poll here that CBS News did in 2012 that found that 13%, oddly enough, 13% would be bothered by being placed on the 13th floor of a hotel. I went to NYU and lived in a dorm room in the 90s, and our dorm had 14 floors, and it did have a 13th floor. And I remember one time me and a friend were in the elevator, and these elevators were always breaking and acting funny. And it was going up. We were going to the 14th floor, and it was going up, and then it stopped. It fell a floor, and then rose a floor, and then the doors opened on the 13th floor, which is not where we were going. And we got out and walked. Um, so yeah, 13th floor bothers me. I wouldn't stay on the 13th floor of a hotel. So Friday the 13th, um, so this is an interesting thing. So Friday is considered an unlucky day. So an unlucky day with the unlucky 13, makes it for a doubly unlucky event. Um, so this story states from the old belief that witches met in groups of 12, with the 13th person being the devil, and they met on Fridays. So you combined all that, and it's Friday the 13th is bad. And then if you look at just Friday in general, um, it's often pointed out that bad things happen in history on Friday. Adam and Eve fell on Friday. The flood started on Friday. The Temple of Solomon fell on a Friday. Christ was crucified on a Friday. So from a Christianity point of view, Friday is, um, a pretty bad day. And then listed here are other superstitions associated just with Friday. So when you combine two unlucky things, then you get a whole new thing. And this is another one of those things that people that say they're not superstitious tend to still feel weird about Friday the 13th. Um, so yeah, that's the story about the 13th. So then we move to what's often considered the luckiest number, which would be 7. This also dates back to Egyptian times. They believed that 7 was a lucky number, and it was their culture's lucky number. And then it also becomes a lucky number in Christian doctrine. The world was made in 7 days. There are 7 graces, 7 stanzas to the Lord's Prayer, 7 ages of men. Christ uttered 7 last words. So it's it was a lucky number before, and then it's cemented later on in biblical stories, and then it just sort of becomes this number that's associated with good luck, and it also extends into other cultures. Seventh heaven is an Islamic concept. There is the best of all heavens, um, and it is believed that a lot of the 7 aspects date back to the fact that there's 7 different phases of the moon. Um, and it changes every 7 days. So again, that's another ancient, where science sort of meets religion, where it's an observation about nature, and sort of becomes part in our culture and human culture of being lucky or unlucky. And a lot of these beliefs date to the fact that our whole culture is kind of founded on the idea that there's good and evil. So something's either lucky or unlucky, good or bad. Um, so unlike 13, 7, I couldn't find anything that suggested 7's an unlucky number. It seems to be universally accepted as a lucky number. For me personally, it's my lucky number because I was born on the 7th. So I like 7. I got nothing against 7. Uh, Moving on, does anybody have anything they want to add? Any questions? Or otherwise, I'm just going to keep rolling through. Okay. So another number thing is 1111. So I don't know if anybody here does this. This is pretty popular. 1111, especially with digital clocks, you make a wish on 1111. Some people do 11-11. 11-11 is the most practiced one. Some people do 111. Some people do 222, 333. Any sort of symmetry of numbers are all the same numbers. But 11-11 is the one that most people do. Some people make a distinction between it has to be 11-11 p.m. Some people don't care. It's 11-11 at all. From my point of view, I do 11-11 a.m., p.m. doesn't matter to me. So the idea is if you make a wish, and some people rub the clock, some people knock on wood when they do it, then your wish will come true. So this is something that the origins are not super clear, but in numerology, 11-11, not just the time, just the two numbers, the 11 4 ones, is a the time where you're or 4 ones is a significant number in New Age numerology, but 11-11 at that specific time, they think that your spirit is closest to being able to access the divine or the universal truths. So they believe that that's where this wishing aspect comes from, but there's no definitive proof. But everywhere I looked pointed back to this. So there's no other theory about where that comes from. And as far as the other numbers on the clock making wishes, it seems that that's just something that people who did this then just expanded it and just wanted to make more wishes, like as we all do. So we're going to move on from numbers to another one that's going to be familiar is object superstitions. So we're all familiar with a lot of superstitions that involve objects. I talked about lucky pennies when we started, and so there's a lot that are surround objects. One of the most well known is, of course, a broken mirror. So everybody knows a broken mirror is 7 years bad luck. But this dates back to before there were mirrors, actual physical mirrors, and people would look at their reflections in ponds or pools, and the ancients believed that to see your reflection was was a gift, was a tool of the gods. That this whole idea of a reflection, and so they thought when they saw their reflection, they were seeing their soul. And that's important to why this superstition of breaking it becomes bad luck. Because if the image of the soul is disturbed or broken, it's thought that some kind of injury is going to happen to you. And then the Romans added 7 years because they believe it took 7 years for your life to renew. So if your image was broken or your soul was broken, it was going to take 7 years for it to be renewed. And so if you break a mirror now physically, there's a lot of counter charms to a superstitions, which I don't see people following as much as the actual superstitions. You'll see there's a couple later on, but so if you break a mirror, you're supposed to bury the pieces of the broken mirror, and that's going to break your bad luck cycle. So another theory about this superstition was that if you broke a mirror, that in itself wasn't the act of bad luck, but it was the gods breaking the mirror to prevent you from seeing something tragic that was going to happen to you. So it wasn't the act of breaking the mirror that caused your bad luck. It was the fact that the gods didn't want to see that something bad is going to happen to you, that you were going to see some sort of future tragic event. So when the mirror broke, then you knew something terrible was bound to happen to you. So Umbrellas are another one. So I have this fight with my wife all the time because my wife is not superstitious, and you know she grew up in Switzerland, and they when they come out of the rain, they keep their umbrellas open by the front door so that they dry out, and this horrifies me to no end, because I believe that you don't open an umbrella in your house. That's bad luck. Um, the I guess the specific superstition is if you hold it over your head, there will be a death in your house within a year. I just generally believe in bad luck. Don't open an umbrella outside. If I see that an umbrella's been open, I will immediately open the door and put it outside on the porch. It like does not come in the house. So in that same CBS poll we talked about before, 16% of Americans in 2012 believe in this superstition. They won't open an umbrella in their house. So this is one of those superstitions that has a pretty sensible um, origin. It's old, and the very first umbrellas that were made in ancient times were clumsy and hard, and they were dangerous. They were also expensive, and so if you open it indoors, you were very likely to hurt somebody or break something. Um, so you attach a superstition on it, and then people are more likely to not go ahead and do that. So moving on to the penny, and this over to other cultures, coins in general, but I focused on pennies because that's what, in America, that's what our superstitions are sort of focused on. So everybody knows you find a penny, heads up, it's good luck. I actually have one in my pocket the other day. I was walking home and I saw one on the sidewalk, and it was the first heads up penny I've seen like out in the wild in a long time. So yeah, I picked it up and it's in my pocket. Um I saw it and I wasn't going to pick it up, but I had just been working on this recently, and I was like, well, now I have to, because I'm also the kind of person that feels that if you ignore something like this, then you're just asking for bad luck because it was staring at you. Um so where does the lucky penny come from? So again, this dates back to an ancient thing. Metal was, a gift from the gods, and all metals were the whole use of metal was given to people as a gift from the gods for protection or to make things. And so if you found metal, you keep it. And it was good, and that if you found it, it was you were lucky to have found it. So they believe that this is where the belief about finding a penny comes from. And of course, pennies are money, so they do have value, whether they're little value or not. It's still something that's worth something. And I mean, to me, that's just also common sense. It's something's valuable and it's there. Of course, it's yours now. Um, so this is kind of what we talked about before, that there was good and evil, so everything was sort of assigned, it was either good or it was evil. So you have two sides of a coin, one side's determined good, the other evil. um, so that is why it's heads up. So this is also that you want to keep. It's the heads up that are good luck. This is something I didn't know, so I guess some people, if you see a penny that's not heads up, you're supposed to turn it over and leave it there for the next person um, to have good luck. Now, I didn't do a slide for this one, but there's also, when I moved into my house that I live in now, we found pennies in windowsills randomly throughout the house, and in the attic, and they were all heads up. And I looked at that, and that is also a kind of a superstition. You're supposed to, if you put coins in your window, specifically heads up, it invites wealth into your house. Um, so that's another superstition that's associated with coins. And then, of course, there's wishing wells. Um, so you toss a coin and make a wish into a wishing well, and your wish will come true. Um, it's believed that this practice started with the Greeks because it was sort of a gift, an offering to the sea gods for safe passage, so your well wouldn't run dry. So it wasn't really you were making a wish; you were kind of like paying off the sea gods who demanded, that you give them something. Um, so supposedly you're supposed to throw it in and wait for your reflection for the water to settle before you make a wish. That is also something I hadn't heard before. And some people think that it's the water gods who grant these wishes. I was reading another article about, Niagara Falls, I guess, is the um, place where the most coins are tossed into each year. And I guess they can turn off Niagara Falls. And when they did it I think it was in the early 60s, they found millions of dollars in coins at the bottom of the thing. And I guess they're thinking about doing it again coming up soon because it hasn't been done in a long time. At least this is what I was reading. Um, and they're speculating that they're going to find millions and millions of dollars at the bottom of Niagara Falls. Side note, they also found 5 dead bodies when they did it in the 60s. So let's hope they won't find those this time. Here's another one, hats on the bed. This one, I don't know many people that practice. My best friend was religious about this one. If there's a hat on the bed, it's supposed to be really bad luck. You never put hats on the bed. And that picture, if anybody's familiar with the movie Drugstore Cowboy, um, this is a superstition that plays a pretty significant role in this movie. And as you can see, this character is laying on the bed with a hat, and everything goes bad after that. So where this comes from is that, people believe that evil spirits lived in the hair. So if you took your hat off and you put it on the bed, and then when you remove the hat, you were inviting those evil spirits to enter the person who then puts their head on that pillow. Sort of like a transferring of evil. Um, another superstitious belief is that placing a hat on the bed is followed by an altercation, and that's what happens in this movie that I the Drugstore Cowboy movie that's pictured here. And this also has to do with the fact that it's the evil spirits that are in the hat, and passing back and forth, and it seems to be that this concept started in India, in that area. It's not a it's not a Western superstition. It's more of an Asian superstition. Um, but yeah, I only know a few people that follow this one, um, but it's there. Uh, okay, so another type of superstition is behavioral superstition, and this is that these superstitions are based on things that we do or things that we shouldn't do or should do, that create luck or create bad luck. One of those would be walking under a ladder. So again, that CBS News poll found that 24% of Americans believe that walking under a ladder is bad luck. 24% is a pretty high number that's a lot of people that, believe that if you just walk under an object, that's bad luck. Um, So again, this one has uh, ancient roots, and it was believed that a pyramid was a universal symbol of life, and that you know to walk under a ladder then would in a way be violating that that sacred idea of life, so you didn't go there.
Do you know where this came from, Brian?
The walking under a ladder,
Yeah,
um it came from, again, I believe this one's Egyptian.
that's what I thought. Yeah.
It's Egyptian, and then and like the 13, it leads itself into Christianity. So early depictions of the crucifixion had a ladder leaning against the cross that Jesus was crucified on, and Satan was often pictured under that ladder by the cross. So then it became the under the ladder became symbolic with a place of evil, or that's Satan's domain. So if you walked under that, then you're walking through uh, or into Satan's territory, and you're going to bring bad luck upon yourself for doing that. Um, so that's that was, and I think like 13, these things are then they're consistently reiterated and strengthened through stories, and then solidified until they become part of our popular culture and our social behavior. um so and then this is one that extended and lived on, probably because in the uh, last couple of hundred years, uh, if you walked under a ladder in a city or something, I mean, there's a good chance that you were going to have paint spilled on you or something fall on you because there's somebody on there working. So it just became kind of like a practical thing, and so then it lives on. So walking under a ladder is also has a counter spell to it. It's pretty complicated. So if you walk under a ladder, you're supposed to quickly make a wish while still under the ladder, cross your fingers and keep them crossed until you see a dog. Make a fig sign. That's where you put your thumb between your middle finger and your index finger, and then walk backward through the ladder to where you started your ill-fated walk. So next time you walk onto a ladder, remember that you're supposed to do all of these things to counter the spell. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I would risk the bad luck rather than try to do all of that stuff. Um, so another behavioral thing is crossing your fingers. Um, and this is the one I have never met anybody in my life personally who doesn't cross their fingers for good luck. Um, that's the universal. I mean, there's also you cross your fingers when you're telling a lie. That, oh well, I had my fingers crossed, so I didn't mean it. Um,
That's about the good luck of having somebody believe you.
well, what do you mean?
I don't know if that's true. It
Oh,
just was a random thought.
well, what it is this is the prevailing theory, is that crossing your fingers is making a cross. And a cross, as we know, is this object that is important in all cultures throughout the world because it's this geometric shape that has significance. So the idea is that if you make a wish, when you have your fingers crossed, you're locking the wish in that intersection of the cross. And then when it'll come true, it'll stay there until it comes true. And when you're lying, you're protecting that lie in that same cross, and it's safe there, and it can't be, can't cause you any trouble. Um, and I found this explanation repeated over and over and over again, and I just couldn't get by the fact. I mean, you look at that picture there, it's like, how does crossing your fingers look like a cross? It's like, it's more like it's barely an X. This child's not even very good at it. So it's like, I don't see how it's a cross, but I mean, the theory kind of makes sense. Um, so it used to be that you'd have to cross your fingers with somebody else. That was the way that they did it before. And so then it starts to make a little more sense when I read that. So when you're doing it with your own fingers, it's not really a cross. But if you're doing it with somebody else, then you're actually making a cross. Um, and that practice seemed to die off at some point, and it just became people doing this, crossing their own fingers. So knocking on wood is another one that most people do, and there's sort of two theories about this, or they're sort of the same, but two kind of ideas at play here. So this is a superstition that seems to date from or be placed at the Norse, beliefs. So the idea is that knocking on wood is a protection against bragging. Um, so if you pointed out, so they believe that there was these like evil spirits living everywhere, hiding in trees, hiding in, they lived in trees, but hiding behind trees. And they were, looking to cause trouble. So if you were bragging about something, you were making yourself a target for them to cause trouble for you. So if you knocked on wood, um, they wouldn't be able to hear you. You were sort of kind of making a distraction for these evil spirits from hearing you.
Aren't the Norse the people who brought us the bloat, which is all about getting drunk and bragging?
But they were probably knocking on wood when they were doing it.
Okay.
Yeah, no, so I mean it was it's definitely northern, it's not Roman, it's not Greek, it doesn't come from Egypt. It's definitely started, it was Germanic, Scandinavian, that area, Northern Europe is where this
I've heard a
concept.
Greek explanation for it.
What's the Greek explanation?
That you are knocking on wood to wake up the nymph who lives in the tree.
Ah, so that would be the opposite of what these people were doing it for, because you were trying to cover them. There you're trying to wake them up. Here you were trying to distract them.
Yeah, I never heard of it having anything to do with bragging either. I always knock on wood for luck, and the idea is that you knock on wood for luck and you wake up the nymph so she can help make it happen.
Okay, so I've always heard it associated with bragging, because it's like, you always say, "Oh, well, you know, ah, I don't have COVID. Oh, knock on wood," because you don't want to jinx yourself, I mean, so I've never said it as a, "Oh, I hope I get this," and knock on wood. I've never made a wish, and I don't know people that do that. So are you saying that that's what you do? You make a wish by knocking on wood?
Um,
Or do you do it to protect yourself when you say something that, "Oh, shouldn't have said that"?
yeah, more like protection. Yeah, as a protection to ward something off. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, I guess both would make sense. You're calling on the nymph to help ward that off, and this one, it makes sense because you're trying to sort of cover it up, whatever it is that you said. So this one was the 51% of people in that same poll that I found. 51% of people knock on wood, um, for one reason or the other. So that this is pretty widely accepted. Some people say you have to knock 3 times. Some people say once is fine. Some people rub wood or touch wood. They don't knock on it. Um, okay, here. Oh no, this is what you were talking about. So they believe that good, helpful gods lived in trees, and they would touch the bark or ask a favor, and a request was granted. Um, yeah. Okay. So that's and then you're supposed to come back and touch it again to say thank you if your wish was granted. Okay. Yeah. So
That
I
makes sense.
yeah. So I forgot it. So you're absolutely right. That's another practice of this superstition. Here's one. Don't step on the crack. Step on the crack, break your mother's back. I'm sure we all did this when we were in as children. I know my daughter, who's 6, she started saying this about a year ago. We never said it. It was, from other kids, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So there are lots of variations from on this chant, but and just this idea of don't step on the cracks also is cross cultural, and they think it has to do with the fact that if a crack represents an opening to the grave, and if you stepped on it, you were sort of disturbing someone's grave. So it's not a thing that started with pavement and sidewalks. It was then it makes more sense if there's a crack in the ground and just a regular ground, then makes sense that it would be associated with a grave. We don't tend to believe that there's people buried under our sidewalks, but um, did I? Right. Okay. So, believe it or not, saying "bless you" or "Gesundheit," that's a superstition. That's not. We consider it just good manners these days, and you're as a child, you're taught that this is proper manners. If somebody sneezes, whatever your cultural um, belief is, you say something in response to somebody's sneeze, but it's based in superstition. Um, and it was like the Romans believed that uh, when you sneezed, you were expelling part of your spirit. And so what they actually said was, "May Jupiter preserve you." Um, the Hebrews said, "God bless you," because they thought when you were sneezing, you were close to death. And they said that Adam sneezed after Eve took a bite of the apple and he saw his own death. Um, in the Middle Ages, it was believed that evil spirits were let loose when you sneezed, sort of like the hat on the bed. There's all these evil spirits in you, and you're either leaving them in your hat or you're sneezing them out on people. So they also thought that sneezing was, an intrusion of the body of foreign objects such as evil spirits, and they jumped out during sneezing. So it was a danger to somebody else, and this is where you sort of see science and belief kind of mixed together. So we now know that when you sneeze, you are expelling germs and bacteria and viruses. Um, so they weren't that far off. It was probably based on some sort of observation. People are sneezing all over each other, and then so and so that was with you when you got sneezed gets sick and dies. Um, you know, it wasn't evil spirits. It was, a communicable disease. So that one is really fascinating because you can really trace the science back to the belief. They didn't know why you sneezed, um, but they knew bad things could happen from it.
Well, the whole idea that you've got something that's invaded your body and needs to jump out is exactly what goes on in a sneeze.
Right.
Is something in your nose and it needs to come out, and so you sneeze.
So it's also interesting in the Middle Ages, if you were if you sneezed 3 times, um, they believed you were cured of whatever it was that was sick. So people, and even going even later than that, you were like dismissed from hospitals. You were considered, oh, you sneezed 3 times in a row, you're healthy now, so, and then you would be discharged from the hospital, and it was of course not true, but there was so much they didn't understand in it, and I couldn't remember. I don't remember exactly. I did find in this research that there was like, the act of sneezing and why people sneezed and how people sneezed was a medical mystery that was only relatively recently solved, like in the last, in the last couple hundred years. Before that, they had no idea why people sneezed. It was a total mystery.
I've
Um,
heard that if you sneeze multiple times without anybody blessing you, then you are going to have ill luck.
hmm. Okay, throwing salt over your left shoulder. This is not one that I've ever practiced, but you see it in movies all the time. Um, so salt is, there are a lot of superstitions based around salt, and like metal, it goes back to before salt was, it was scarce, it was expensive, and it had these sort of magical properties. It could keep things longer, and so it was, so there becomes this valuable sort of sacred element that then easily becomes associated with different um, superstitions, and of course also tears. The are salty and they're coming from your body, and what is this stuff? It's got to be important. So um so what they thought was that uh salt could be a protection against evil, because it could preserve food, it could also preserve people. So when salt was spilled, a special guardian spirit was supposed to be warning against some impending danger. Um, and then with the left shoulder, right shoulder, left is often associated with evil and right with good. And so if you threw it over your left shoulder, you're basically throwing salt at the devil if he's looking over your shoulder. Um, there's another belief that if an evil spirit means to do you harm, if you the throwing of the salt is a counter charm, because they have to count every grain of salt before they can you know do whatever it was they were going to do for you. So it's a sort of distraction, and the thinking was that they would give up um, before you do that. So there was another, there was a Greek thing that they gave salt if you had a stranger or a welcome guest in your house. You gave them a gift of salt in their hand. You put salt in their hand, and that was like this sort of token or expression of friendship. The saying, take it with a grain of salt, came from a doctor or scientist that believed that you could condition yourselves to accept poison as long as you took it with a grain of salt. So if you were taking these poisons, and if you took it with a grain of salt, then you would build up immunity to this poison, which again is kind of based on science. You can develop a tolerance for things, and has nothing to do with the salt, though. So if there's any sports fans here, that that sports are full of superstitions. You see it all over, from little kids up to professional athletes, and there are some of them that you see. I mean, it's sort of borderlines on obsessive compulsive disorder. There's I forget who it was. There was a baseball player that went through this whole routine of tightening his gloves, tapping himself here, and it got to the point where they had to make him stop because it was just slowing everything down. But some widespread sports superstitions are, standing in the same spot in basketball to shoot free throws, or bouncing the ball the same number of times, or throwing it, bouncing so it comes back to you. You know, Lucky shirts, lucky shoes, lucky socks. There's all kinds of superstitions associated with sports and what they do. And I there was a chart that showed the percentage of athletes that believe in these different superstitions, and most of them were like 50 to 60 to 70%. But there are some that don't shower before a game, or there were some that shower before a game. There was some, so like the 13, some's good, some's, for some it's lucky, some it's unlucky. There are opposites on a lot of these, depending on what these people believe. All right, the last category we cover is animal superstitions. And there's a black cat. Personally, I have always had black cats. I like black cats. So in ancient Egypt, black cats were revered above all other animals. They were extremely lucky. And then witches came along, and black cats became associated with witches. Um, so the Norse believed that black cats were in service to a witch for 7 years, and then would become witches themselves. Um, Satan is also believed to take the form of a black cat when he's dealing with those witches again. It's all about the witches. And evil spirits are supposed to leave their animals' bodies on Halloween night, which is why black cats on Halloween are considered especially bad luck. And even to this day, most animal shelters, you cannot adopt a black cat near Halloween. They won't let you because they're afraid of what people are going to do to them. Um, so the superstition of a black cat crossing your path was supposed to let you know that Satan has noticed you. Um, and there's also, the notion that black cats, or any cats, they try to steal the breath from babies. In real life, science is sort of, and cats will do that, but science has shown that they're really just sniffing the milk smell that's on the baby's breath. Has nothing to do with them trying to steal breath. Interestingly enough, black cats have always been considered good luck to sailors and sailors' wives, um, or husbands, um, would keep black cats in their home, and that meant that they would have a safe return home. So here's the rundown. In America, a black cat is crossing your path is considered bad luck. In England, a black cat walking towards you is considered good luck. In Japan, a black cat crossing your path is also good luck. So basically, you can take your pick. You can fall either way on a black cat. It could be good luck or bad luck, depending on what you choose to believe. Lucky rabbit's foot. So the rabbit's foot is considered, the one of those classic good luck charms. But to be truly lucky, it has to be the left hind paw of an animal that was killed at a full moon by a cross-eyed person. So I don't think the ones you're buying in stores meet that criteria. And it has to be carried in your left pocket, not your right pocket. So why is this animal's foot considered a lucky charm? One, they have very strong hind legs, and the hind legs touch the ground ahead of their front ones. So ancient people noticed this and they thought it was pretty remarkable, and they therefore ascribed magical powers to those hind legs. So other rabbits, so at a birth, an infant is supposed to be brushed with a rabbit's foot. The rabbit's foot is supposed to be placed in the stroller when the child is taken out by anybody other than the parent. Gout is supposed to be relieved by a person carrying a rabbit's foot with them, and it's supposed to also be good for cramps. Um, However, like the black cat, the rabbit is often believed to be a witch in disguise. Um, if that's true, if it is a witch that's disguised herself, you can only kill that rabbit with a silver bullet, because apparently it must be a vampire as well. Um, so this is my personal favorite religion, religion, superstition, saying rabbits. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with this, but the way this one works is that you say rabbit, rabbit. Um, and this is one that was pretty common in the late 1900s and the early 20th century, and it started in Britain from all accounts. So you're supposed to say rabbit 3 times before going to sleep the last day of the month, and then hares 3 times about waking up in the next morning, and this will bring you good luck for the whole month. But there's so many variations of this. One is that you say white rabbit at night or when you wake up, and black rabbit in the morning. The one that most people I know practice is just the first thing you say when you wake up on the first of the month. The first thing you say out loud, you say rabbit, rabbit out loud, and it's supposed to bring you good luck for the rest of the month. So there's some people that think you can wait until midnight and say it at midnight. Other people say that you have to wake up and say it. It's when you wake up that day. That you must say rabbit, rabbit. So the first recorded reference to this superstition is from 1909. It seems to have predated, but it seemed to be started by children. There was these parents all over this one area that their children started doing it, and they were shouting rabbit, rabbit up the chimney on the first morning of the month. And these parents were all mystified by it. And that's why I tend to think this is the best one, because I feel like children are often onto things. They know more about stuff like this than we do. And so if children made this up, if children believed in it, it has to be true. Somebody else who thought this had to be true was FDR. FDR was a believer in saying rabbits. He apparently said rabbits the first of every month without fail, and tried to never miss that. For me personally, I only do it on January 1st. On January 1st, first thing in the morning that I say is rabbit, rabbit, and it brings you good luck for the whole year. I am on my 7th year where I have not missed it in 7 years, and I've had a pretty good 7 years. So that proves it's true. So the question then becomes, why do we believe? Why do we believe these superstitions? And the prevailing theory is that it's superstitious instruction. Children believe what they are told, and that questioning things that you're told is the thing that you develop later in life, and and then by that time it's sort of sunk in. But most of these superstitions are taught from one child to another. um, they absorb these things from each other in outdoor places, in playgrounds, in streets, anywhere that they meet, or other kids bringing good luck charms to school. And psychology and sociology proves that children treat the beliefs and rights of other children more seriously than they do the beliefs and practices of adults. So it becomes learned behavior, that they see it, and children are picking these things up from their parents, of course, or from other children, and then it just sort of keeps these things going. Um, so these ancient beliefs that we have, they continue to be part of childhood. And they these simple these beliefs, some of these beliefs haven't changed in centuries, and they share this truth with others. And there was a thing I was reading, they also added, also usually with gruesome details. You'll hear children say things like, oh no, that's true, so and so found this, and when they did, this is what happened, and they'll elaborate on some horrible um, evidence of bad luck to prove their superstition. So um, you know the academics agree that what children do and practice can't really be classified as true superstition, because they're just sort of going along with something. But what happens is that these childhood beliefs grow into adult superstitions. So a lot of them you'll shed as you get older, but some of them you hold on to and you continue to practice. So they believe that whether that you're if you're superstitious and you're doing these things, your tendency to believe in superstition, or to be um, a yeah, I guess to believe in superstition, it stems from your childhood. Whatever happened in your childhood, um, has made you either more likely to believe in superstitions or less likely to believe in superstitions. But basically, it is our attempt to try to control the uncontrollable, and children have that need a little bit more than adults, because the world is often not rational to them. So they can't control things, and they want to feel like they have some sort of control. And if this good luck charm gives me some sort of control, or if I do this, then I have some sort of control. It sort of becomes embedded in your psychology, and you grow up, and you end up a full-grown person making wishes at 11:11 and saying "rabbit, rabbit" on the 1st of January every month. Um, so that's all I got. Does anybody have any questions? Any stories they want to share?
Have you heard about the poppy seeds at the door?
No.
If you sprinkle poppy seeds in front of your door, the demons can't come in because they have to count them all, just like the salt.
Just like the salt. It makes perfect sense to me.
Yep.
Yeah. um, Does anybody else have any good superstitions that we didn't talk about that you might do or practice? I mean, it was hard to narrow them down when I was making this, because there's just so many interesting ones. And you can find lots of books that are like dictionaries of superstitions, and you can just go back and forth and pick a topic and look. I mean, there is an endless supply of superstitions. Some I'd never heard of, a lot I was sort of familiar with. Okay, well, if nobody else has anything, I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I'm gonna stop recording.
I'd love to see your sources.
Okay, that's on the next